Germany makes game-changing move, prepares for war to defeat khazarian mafia. For the past few weeks the wheels of geopolitics have been churning the mud during a summer ceasefire. That is now ending. The German government has made a decisive break with the khazarian mafia and has ordered its citizens to stockpile 10 days' worth of emergency food supplies in preparation for a war of independence, according to both CIA and MI6 sources. In addition, the German government is mobilizing 600,000 militia members in preparation for this war, the sources say. The trigger for this mobilization was a request by the Khazarian-controlled U.S. government for Germany to accept a massive force flag attack on its territory as an excuse for totalitarian Khazarian rule. The Germans have decided to refuse this request and are instead allying themselves with the Russians and effectively joining the UK and Turkey in a Western-led move against the Khazarian-controlled American government, the sources agree. This information can be confirmed in a series of German government statements seen in the corporate media. These include the announcement of the emergency food supply request, a statement by the German foreign minister that Germany needs to work with Russia and a statement by the economy minister that the U.S. Khazarian-led TTIP trade agreement was dead in the water. The German move is just the opening salvo of what is expected to be a decisive campaign to permanently end Khazarian control of the West and its remaining slave states. Expect similar moves in many countries as the autumn offensive against the Finan Khazarian mafia strongholds goes into full gear. As the snowball effect continues, keep your eyes on France, Japan, Turkey, Saudi Arabia and Brazil among other places over the coming months. Another clear signal that things are not as normal is the fact that Khazarian presidential candidate Hillary Clinton has become too scared to meet actual real people and has begun using green screen to tape her campaign performances. That is because the people on the bounty list issued by the White Dragon Society have been vanishing from public view one by one. That is also because her mass-murdering Bush-Clinton-Rockefeller mafia bosses are hated by a vast portion of the world's awakening public. The Chinese, for their part, have given up on Hillary and, since they also have no love for Republican candidate Donald Trump, are now considering a more radical move. They have invited Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to visit China before the big September the 4th to the 5th G20 meeting the Chinese are hosting. Sources in Asian secret societies say the Chinese will ask Trudeau if he would be interested in leading a Mexican-American-Canadian-North American alliance. It is not clear, however, just how aware of reality Trudeau is. The Canadian corporate press parrots its U.S. counterparts like the New York Times in presenting outright lies as facts. In their worldview it was not the Saudis and their Bush-Clinton allies who used sarin gas in Syria but rather the dictator Assad, never mind that he was elected in an internationally observed poll. In their worldview as well Russia's Vladimir Putin is an evil dictator who invaded the Crimean Peninsula. The same press holds to the worldview that Hillary Clinton is the reasonable status quo candidate and that Donald Trump is a crazy maniac who must not be allowed to have power. This writer's own mother, who gets her information from Canadian newspapers and the Canadian Broadcast Corporation, CBC, held views along these lines. Robert Fulford, a prominent Canadian writer, not a direct relative of your correspondent, for example, wrote an editorial in the Canadian press that also went along with this worldview. So it is quite possible Trudeau is still too brainwashed to understand the historical opportunity the Asians are going to offer him. In any case, the Chinese are going to try to make the most of the G20 meeting they are hosting. They have invited countries that are not in the G20 to participate as well as top European Union leaders in a sign they are going to push hard for big changes in the way this planet is run. The meeting follows months of concerted selling of US Treasury bonds by central banks all over the world. This time it is clear the Asians are not going to let the usual criminals take over after the US corporate government's bankruptcy negotiations conclude. The owners of the Federal Reserve Board system for their part, got locked in a death spiral. They are printing their own fiat money, to buy shares and corporate bonds issued by their own companies. It is like a snake swallowing its own tail. Everybody else, including old-fashioned pension fund managers and other institutional investors with integrity, are avoiding the entire cesspool that the U.S. financial markets have become. That is the real reason why Fed Chairperson Janet Yellen hinted at raising interest rates last week. If they do try to raise interest rates, it will have the opposite effect of what they expect, because it will be seen as a sign of desperation, not strength. Even looting the Japanese national pension fund to the tune of over $100 billion is not enough to help these criminals keep their empire solvent. The situation has become such that Jacob de Rothschild has warned that the system of central banks his family was instrumental in creating was headed for systems failure. The Rand Corporation, a warmongering neocon think tank, has reacted to the situation by saying the US should declare war on China sooner rather than later. However, they are about 10 years too late to make that call. At the time the Pentagon ran simulation after simulation involving a war with China and the result was always the same. The loser would unleash nuclear war and the result would be that 90% of the world's population dies and the northern hemisphere of the planet becomes uninhabitable. That is the same reason why the Asians are not going to do anything arrogant that will provoke the military-industrial complex into choosing mutually assured destruction. Instead, the brainy part of the military-industrial complex is already dealing with the situation with a compelling argument that we do not want to replace khazarian mob rule with Chinese totalitarianism. The Japanese, Koreans, Indonesians, Vietnamese, Indians and others understand this argument as do the Chinese. In the Middle East, the Pentagon is keeping to its deal with the Russians to divide their regions of influence along the Euphrates River, with the Russians getting what is west of it while the Americans get what is east of it. The Turks are also now going along with this. The fighting now going on in the region is against mercenary armies working for oil companies still controlled by the Clinton/Bush/Rockefeller mafia. The Israelis have also figured this out and have invited the Russians in to try to help them find peace with their neighbors. This will mean they will have to give up their messianic delusions about ruling the world from Jerusalem and accept a fair deal with the Palestinians and others. They no longer have a superpower to manipulate into fighting for them and so must learn to be humble.